If you like data and operating systems of devices, today was your day. Also, if you ever wanted a video to show a science class about women in STEM, today's first witness's testimony would be a great one to show. Today was day 25 of the Karen Reed trial. Welcome to the Roundup, True Crime with Mike. Here I give you an update to current cases so you can quickly catch up on today's or this week's happenings on some public cases. The first hour of the trial was strange because we didn't have camera feeds. What appears to have happened was that the camera caught a view of one of the jurors going to sidebar, so the judge decided to turn the cameras off for a bit. We then found out one of the jurors was asked to leave. We heard rumors that one of the jurors did some independent research by going to the Waterfall bar. We are now down 2 jurors out of the 4 extra. The day started off with Jessica Hyde from Hexordia. Her career started in the military, and then she became a career computer forensic analyst and spent years doing it, and then started her own company in computer forensics. Her firm was asked to investigate the timing of some Google searches and deletions on Jenn McCabe's phone. It's been a while since we heard from Jenn McCabe. One of the things that the defense has said is that she performed a search on her phone for how hose long to die in the cold. This search was supposedly done at 2:27 a.m. Let's start with hearing her conclusions.
In Mr. Green's analysis, there is a conclusion that is drawn that a search occurred at 02:47 a.m. on January 29th based on the artifact recovered from Browser State DB that Celebrite parses. And there are two errors with that. The assumption that that is the time of the search is a misunderstanding of the Browser State DB artifact, because that artifact is not the time of search, it's the time of movement of the tab, as well as the statement that, that it was deleted due to the demarcation of Celebrite as recovered.
And based on the totality of your analysis, your testing, and everything that you looked at in this case, what, if any, conclusions did you come to?
My conclusion is that there was a search at 02:47 a.m. for Hawk Mock Sports. That browser was in use, and there were continual searches due through the night. The phone was, I do agree with Mr. Green's findings that the phone was in use at that time at 02:27. Later, the phone a web search is done at 6:23 a.m. For how long, at that moment, Apple produces a suggestion for how long to digest food. The search is instead completed with how long TI die in CKLD at 6:23. A new search is conducted at 6:24 of HOS long to die in cold, Haas long to die in cold. That search is then the last search that is made in that particular tab. And that's my conclusion.
What, if any, conclusion?
So if you ever wanted to hear about the file system and how SQL databases work on an iPhone, then today and this morning was something to listen to. I am not an iPhone user, but I certainly see it in my phone, where I will look and see that I have 10 tabs open from my browser. And I am like, how did I have 10 tabs open? So the argument was that she made was that on January 29th, Jen was using Safari on her iPhone, and she looked for basketball scores for local high schools, and then opened a separate tab. Then at 6:24 in the morning, that tab was then used to search for the infamous hose long it take. Her argument is that the operating system had logs at 6:23 indicating that she was searching for something, and that the Cellubrite misinterpreted the tab being closed shortly after as the search being conducted earlier. For us ordinary listeners, it's very hard because most of us don't know anything about SQL and the databases that iPhone uses. In that, we don't have access to the Cellubrite software to check it for ourselves. On cross, Unetti tried to make the case that the search could have happened at 2:27 a.m., and let's hear her response.
Can you rephrase, please?
I'm going to phrase it the same way and hope I can
Repeat it. Repeat it, please.
Thank you. Would you agree with me that another simple explanation for that 2:27 a.m. timestamp was that the user of that iPhone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m. on January 29th of 2022?
That timestamp is not indicative of a time of search. So the question is difficult to answer because I can't say that that timestamp tells me anything about the time of search.
Okay. So your, as I take your answer, you're not denying that the timestamp and whatever you get from that timestamp doesn't rule out that the Google search was done at or before 2:27 a.m., correct?
If I'm understanding your question, there was a double negative, so I just want to clarify. The question is if the timestamp could exist because of a search happening at that time?
No.
No, okay.
What I'm saying is your analysis of the phone does not rule out that the user of that phone performed that Google search at or before 2:27 a.m.
There is no indication of a Google search at or before 2:27 a.m.
But again, I'm getting to whether you can rule that out, ma'am. That's really the crux of my question. Can you rule out that the user of that phone conducted that search at or before 2:27 a.m. on January 29th?
There is a very unlikely possibility based on the fact that there is no evidence that the search occurred before that time. That's just like saying that the user searched for pandas at 2:27 a.m. Could you rule that out? I can't rule out something that doesn't exist.
All right, well, you would agree.
This will be remembered as the panda retort. The next witness up was Trooper Joseph Paul, who works as a car accident crash analyst. He works for the Massachusetts State Police. Before lunch, he had talked about how he mapped out certain items and things at 34 Fairview. He created a map that showed John's final resting spot, his shoe, taillights, other glass, the flagpole, and the fire hydrant. After lunch is where we got into the more interesting data. Joseph first talked about the computer system in the Lexus that alerts for airbag deployment. He said that this didn't have any data because the airbag wasn't deployed. Joseph then talked about Toyota systems, which Lexus uses, has trigger events when certain conditions are met, so there can be investigations. One of those events is that the accelerator in reverse hits more than 30% of the pedal being pushed down. He said it happened twice in the logs. Unfortunately, there weren't timestamps, but it's done on mileage. So Joseph was able to give the mileage of when the car got to the shop, and then the mileage of the events that occurred, and he estimated Karen's travel from when they picked up the car, and then the 36-mile changes that were in the range of when things would have happened that night. So there were two reverse events, but the second one is the one that is important. And let's look at the chart. The chart shows a 10-second frame that has interesting data, and two things popped out to the trooper. First was that from 11:41.55, which is not the exact time, but a different time in the system, the car started to go in reverse, and then in 5 seconds it hit 24.2 miles per hour. Half a second later, it showed a slight drop in speed, but still a high acceleration on the pedal. This is where he believed that Karen hit John. Because John is a pedestrian, cars don't slow speeds as much as when they hit another car, and we still see the car going fast at the time. Joseph described how he believed that the car hit John in the head and arm, the shoe came off, and John twisted around with the impact. After the car data was finished, he described several testing methods done at the police station. First, they tested brakes and steering, and no problems both forward and in reverse. Then the topic switched to the sensors when the car backs up. As most of us have newer cars, the display in front switches to backup camera when in reverse, and in this car, it beeps when an object gets near. He said it beeps louder as the object gets closer. He tested with a punching bag. Then there were videos shown to show how fast the acceleration was done in the reverse direction. Let's check.
If I could ask you to pause there for just a moment.
Going 24 miles per hour in reverse, even in a controlled environment, is nerve-wracking, so we didn't go very far. The trooper started to testify about the video of Karen hitting John's car in the early hours, but they broke there and took the jury out. The defense didn't know he would testify to the other video. I haven't seen a good explanation of why somebody would accelerate to 24 miles per hour in reverse at any time. Even drunk, you wouldn't go that fast in reverse before you realized it was wrong. And during that time, the steering wheel was straight. It only changed when the car slowed down and when he thought the car hit John O'Keefe. People wanted the data, but Karen supporters will come up with other reasons for what was seen. In regard to the cross on Ms. Hyde, it was short. It's not a witness you really cross. You put your own expert witness on to rebut the other expert witness. But even without the witness, the jury will have to ask themselves, why would you get home, search for high school basketball scores, and then make a search that you didn't bring up any of the search results to read? There is no quick answer for the question like how many pints are in a quart that you get the answer right away. We believe that the state will finish up next week. Monday is a full day, and then it continues on Thursday. We expect to hear from the medical examiner and then hear Karen's voicemails. Thank you for listening to an episode of The Roundup. Be safe out there, and remember, don't do anything bad that will end up on one of my episodes.